The explanation that the experiment was an accident was that it was not intended to produce that result, and if it could not produce that result, then it's not at all science. If you cannot repeat an experiment again and again, it's not science. But could this be science fiction, like cold fusion, something that was strange but could not be repeated? That does not mean that cold fusion is not science. Some people say that it does work and that they have repeated the experiment. It is the same with Philadelphia. There is evidence that the experiment was repeated with an aircraft in 1958 that was also called Project Rainbow. Now, the evidence is circumstantial, as it was under the control of the CIA, and we can't be sure Wikipedia has it right. The whole thing is a mistake based on one man's idea about how to make himself famous, and that could be, well, what I'm doing as well. I want to solve the experiments so that I can make a movie. But Indiscernible heard rumours of an experiment that he liked science fiction and UFOs because he read Jessop's book, and only a fringe of people have read Jessop's book. It was not a popular novelette, so he made the whole thing up, and that is why he confessed to before he died. He is supposed to have told a magazine that the whole thing was a hoax and that he acted alone. But the ONR involvement seemed to have been real, or so maybe he did not act alone. Maybe he was part of the ONR and the man of the hour. But if he is their patsy, he kept their secret until he was old enough. Old enough not to care, or that they told him that the circumstances had changed and they wanted to distance themselves from the story that he had become Philadelphia. Maybe saner minds at the ONR prevailed, and they saw the dangers of these people believing in disinformation. They said the disinformation is to cover up time travel experiments and that they are real. Maybe some secret experiments and theories may be not involving time travel as disinformation says. I really don't think they've built a time machine under a mountain with a billion-dollar budget that bypasses Congress. This kind of conspiracy just can't exist. But how was the Manhattan Project funded? And is there a new Manhattan Project for energy? And is it funded? Secretly, the question of whether the CIA made AIDS and Alaba indiscernible into space-borne illnesses is just as ludicrous, of course. The Nazis would have kept technology a secret, especially the atomic bomb, and the Russians were able to keep the Cuban crisis a secret from their own people. However, this was before the internet. It is possible that a secret these days, with the internet everywhere, maybe if you could tell lies about the subject, and maybe that's what the Philadelphia experiment really is. The anatomy of a lie. And it answers the question, why do people tell lies about something this important? Do people have a need to believe in something bigger than themselves when they don't believe in God? So they choose UFOs or the Philadelphia experiment. Where there are technologies available in the US in the 1950s that were advanced enough to create a complete displacement such as the Philadelphia experiment. Radio and magnetic fields are being in existence for nearly 200 years. Philadelphia experiment was a cloaking experiment to create radar invisibility. This was designed to be a secret. By Tesla, I dispute that Tesla was involved at all and is reputed to have utilized a spherical indiscernible field of HF radio waves superimposed on a magnetic component. By Tesla, I dispute that Tesla was involved at all. It is reputed to have utilized a spherical indiscernible field of HF radio waves superimposed on a magnetic component. There are no theoretical limitations to the possibility of walking space-time. All the other to the extent of the EM waves are deflected around the area. With regard to displacement, side effects occurred during the phase shifting of the electron, still slightly outside the dimensions, i.e. that matter no longer reflected light to the observers. A similar invisibility effect can be observed when a hydrogen bomb is detonated. It becomes actually invisible, but just because of the collapse of the core. This is caused by the stripping of electrons and subsequent collapse of the device initiated by the core. Was the government of the time capable of covering up the information and lying to the public? The stealth bomber was classified for nearly 30 years, and no one knew about the side of Black Ops. This proves the secretive capabilities. Since we are talking about a few decades before the stealth bomber, we would expect a small decrease in security. 3. Are there survivors of the Philadelphia experiments? When that's debatable. 4. Were Einstein's theories of the whole basis of the Philadelphia experiment? No. While describable in a relative framework, the device could be constructed using 19th century knowledge of radio and magnetics with a large amount of funding. Tesla's involvement seemed to have discernible and based disinformation where Einstein and not Tesla were working for the Navy at the time. Did the US government experiment with combing psychic abilities and machines as a follow-up to the Philadelphia experiment? This is claimed by Albert and others and is scientifically feasible since the brain emits radiation relative to the thoughts and matter that is composed on energy. That it would be possible to condense matter directly using the human mind and a powerful scientific device. In fact, is the only feasible approach since we already know that consciousness and perception is strangely central to reality. Computers capable of the equivalent of human thoughts and power will not exist until 2015 or so. My friend Justin wrote this, and I agree with the skeptics, and the answer to all these questions is not likely. 6. Of the experiments still going on, our current technology has reached such a level that it actually makes Star Trek look laughable. I've personally experienced the technological level possessed by government agencies to be far beyond what is even thought possible from the many public arena scientists. However, I do dispute this, and do lecturers keep these secrets from physics students when they are trying to prepare them for a life of scientific inquiry? No, it would not be science then. And when do the students get initiated into these secret theories? Did and do satellite technology play a role in the physical displacement of matter? The invention of the transistor, public UFO sightings, fiber optics, and other important points in human social growth occurred during the 1940s and 50s. According to accounts, the equipment utilized valves of the power stages. Even to this day, valves are used for a number of high-power, long-life applications and can still handle high power levels at frequencies unachievable by transistors. These 3 questions have no relation to the discussion and therefore cannot be answered. To give my personal opinion, aliens have been steering our development from the start. It goes back to the good and bad aliens, the myth that some guide our humanity and that some want to destroy us, and they fight between them. We are pawns in their cosmic game, but this seems too unlikely. Are governments taking part in similar experiments? Was there a Nazi Germany Philadelphia experiment or later a Russian one? It seems that there are no German records to check. Destroyed by bombings, in theory. Are other governments taking part in similar experiments? Well, I think that this one is relevant. If the disinformation was aimed at the Nazis, and there should have been some experiment in Germany. 9. Were ancient technologies taken into account? What ancient technology, except Greek philosophy, there was no experimental technology in ancient times, and scientific method of experimentation was not used until modern times. 10. Are extraplanetary aliens shaping similar experiments? Aliens from where you'd think we'd know in the solar system they come from, if it were that easy. It's generally accepted that the Philadelphia experiment, as is frequently described, never happens. I can't speak to the history, but I can speak to the physics. There is no aspect of the experiment, the invisibility, teleportation, that is remotely possible in any sense. What little I have read is science fiction. It would be pretty cool, but to say the beat of my knowledge, it is impossible. So, Justin and I said exactly the opposite, that all the physics we have to date make the experiment happen. So, I believe that the mathematicians, not only the history of the experiment is impossible, but also the physics. Albeit realized in his place, the Philadelphia experiment, while watching the movie by the same name. This is so funny, peculiar, that it is ridiculous. It was such a presumptuous prophet. What God has made, twisted men cannot straighten out. And that is what it is like with this experiment. Tesla's involvement comes from so that you have to separate the fact from the fiction. It was Einstein and his theory that was supposed to be tested in 1943. And the Navy, whom Einstein was working for, maybe, that there were experiments that were done to test Einstein's field theory as part of the Manhattan Project. At the time, nobody knew his theory was incomplete without Heisenberg's uncertainty principles. Everybody in 1943 believed Einstein, especially the Army and the Navy. Maybe they wanted a ship to deliver a nuclear weapon that would be invisible.